Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this episode of Focus on Parliament on this beautiful Saturday morning on this amazing Easter Eve of 2023. My name is Okot, Olaa, and today I will be your host. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by reminding you of the very first article in the Constitution that talks about you being the state. And the Parliament, as we know, is your representative in the whole state structure. And this show, for this purpose, is to break down the issues that the Parliament handles for the parliamentarians themselves who represent you, but also for you, our dear viewers. So on this panel today, our goal is to break down a very interesting development, an alternative budget placed on the floor last week, 31st April, by Matthias Mpuga, the leader of opposition in the current parliament. So for that purpose, we have four amazing panelists today who will be breaking down the issue for you. I would love to briefly introduce them. We have the Honorable Ambassador Awich Pollar, a member of the NRM Secretariat. We have Harris Akampulira, my contemporary, but also my speaker, Speaker of Kawempe. We have the seasoned politician, Alaso. I don't know what title she currently holds, but she's a member of the Alliance for National Transition, a woman that I admire a lot and grew up following. Then finally, Ochieno Joseph, who I know is ready to fire this morning. A UPC ideologue, but also a media personality and a regular on this show. I would like to note also that it's a spectrum of many colors. We have yellow, we have two feuding reds. I don't know which shade of red. We have purple. So it's a representative panel. Thank you very much. And let's get straight to the topic. So we have an alternative budget that was released by Matthias Mpuga, a reaction to the budget released by his namesake, Matthias Kasaija, a few weeks ago, that proposed a national budget that is human rights focused. One of the figures that really struck me was the health budget of 2.89 trillion. I think that was a very interesting figure. But today, we will not delve so much into the figures, but rather the rationale and the feasibility of the alternative budget. And I think having persons from both the government, the ruling regime, and the opposition gives us a very good diversity of opinions on that. And for that purpose, I would love to start with the man in the arena, Ambassador Awich Pollar. Theodore Roosevelt famously said, the critics, we should not focus so much on criticism, that don't always be on the side of criticism. Always strive to be the man in the arena. You are currently the man in the arena. What do you think about the alternative budget in terms of, is it feasible or is it naive to the realities of statecraft? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I look at it from two perspectives. From how I look at it from the procedural aspect and how I look at it from the content aspect. But before that, if we were to look at the content aspect, I would have wanted to proceed that he who alleges has the burden to prove. So I would have wished my young boy here should have presented, because they are the owners of the budget. So he who alleges then would look at it, because we may not have had the chance to read the content. But however, let me say procedurally, and I had said I'm looking at it from two aspects. The procedural aspect is that we see rules being followed. We see democracy in place, because we held election under the multi-party system, whereby the opposition party is opposition in parliament. And part of the discharge of the work of opposition is to do exactly what they have done. present an alternative view. So they presented the budget as an alternative view. So that's why I'm saying, looking at it procedurally, this is excellent. That is good. And for us as a party, we like it, we respect it, because you never could say, we could know, they could have put something where our eyes didn't see. And such an issue raised in the process of discussion will bring us to a compromise. Or even if it is not captured in this compromise, next year, life won't be the same. So procedurally, it's okay. And I therefore thank our colleagues in the opposition that that is way to go. They're doing their work. They're doing their, apart from oversight duty as a member of parliament generally, but they're also doing their work as watching over us. Because at the end of the day, for us, we believe whatever we are doing is in the best interest of a Ugandan. So there's nothing wrong with that. Good procedure. Now, on content, as we already mentioned on health and other aspects, we may differ. One of the reasons for differing is that all this is based on the resource envelopes. So do we have that in the resource envelopes? Two, we differ in priority areas. There has been this outcry of a lot of money put in governance, RDCs, presidential advice, and so on. Our view is that we're doing it to address a wrong. Also, there's a cry that maybe a lot of money is spent on security and all that. Our view is that we need security first. That security will enable us to produce. So we have variance in the content. And the variance is in the fact that naturally, maybe not all of us can look the same. We are two different brains. We have two different assessments. Not even a twin can look at an item the same way. So we have that variance. So for us, what we did, and by the way, I think one is called Matthias, one is called Mattia. So the Mpoga is Matthias, I think, and then Kasaijan is Mattia. Is that right?
What difference does it make?
The spelling is different.
Not to the budget.
No, I want to differentiate the two personalities who presented.
Okay. Yes.
Now, if I call you Ukelo when you are not Ukelo, is that okay? You want me to say, you Ukelo, you are in this party when you are not Ukelo? What does it mean? So I just want to be exact on personalities that we are talking about.
Yes.
That the leader of opposition is Matthias, he presented this, and the leader of with a TH and IS. The other one is Mattia without a TH, without S.
Thank you very much, my elder brother, Awich Pollar, for that analysis. I think from what you say, procedure, I also like to agree with that. I saw during the launch of the event, the wide representation from including government members. So at least even physically, we managed to see the complementation or the complementary efforts of government towards the alternative budget. In terms of priority, I think that forms the crux of the discussion, and that's where Harris is going to come in. We also appreciate the differentiation between Matthias and Mattia, though I believe one is just a local corruption of the other. So coming to the priority areas, we all agree that procedurally, and there's no debate about that. But Mr. Harris, you on this forum, more than anyone, fall closer to the leader of opposition. And this is, in any case, your pitch to the state. What do you make of the human rights approach? Do you just say it because you're not in a position where you have to face the realities that force our colleagues in government to prioritize certain aspects? Or do you actually mean what you say when you talk of a human rights approach to the national budget?
Thank you very much. Good morning to our viewers. It's an honor to appear on this panel with the distinguished citizens of this country. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
To your question, I would like to first make an observation.
Yeah.
That first of all, we are a poor nation. That our budget at the tune of about 50 trillion as presented by the government.
Yes.
Yes.
Natia.
Is less than the budget for the research and development department of Hawaii. which is just one of a Chinese company.
Mm.
Our budget is smaller than the research department of that company.
Mm.
That's how poor we are as a nation, and it's important to appreciate that fact.
Yeah.
And once we appreciate that as a nation, as a whole, individually, but also collectively as a nation, then we begin to ask the most important question: how do we raise this budget? And the question lies in the productivity of our people, the productivity of Uganda as a nation. If our cap is at 50 million, our expectation is at 50 million, which the funding is the available money is only as 28 trillion, it shows you our capacity as a nation. And our capacity is that we are so bad off. That what a Ugandan, an average Ugandan can do in a year, an American can do in a week. Now that's bad. So so that's why the conversation is. And that's why as the opposition, we are proposing that we need to have a paradigm shift. We need to have a different approach to budgeting. A budget is a form of a plan. How do you, approach the development question of the country for the next financial year?
Yeah.
And we are saying that money should be put where Ugandans are. In other words, we should use a human rights-based approach. The human rights-based approach means that you focus more on empowering the citizen, every citizen. When you look at the statistics by UN, it will tell you that about 15 million Ugandans, young Ugandans who are of school-going age, are out of school, they are not in training, they are not in employment, they are lost out there. But this is potential productivity workforce. So which means if these 15 million Ugandans, they are not in education, they are not in training, they are not in employment, they are nowhere.
Yeah.
They are just busybodies. So in productivity terms, they are not producing anything. Yet if you had a government that plans well for its citizens, that thinks about its citizens, this would be a huge resource of making sure that you enhance the capacity of the nation to develop. But what Ambassador Awich's government has been focused on for the last 20 years, they started a little bit well, but for the last 20 years, then they became preoccupied with the consolidation of power. Now, consolidation of power means three things. Number one, corruption. Their IGG has told us that the country loses over 1 trillion annually. That's a lot of money that could have gone into productive sectors. Number two, rent seeking. They are busy concerned with how do we buy support? How do we stop these boys from Kamocha? They call us boys from Kamocha. The other day, Andrew has confidence even say we are hooligans because we challenge the conversion. We don't look like people they expect to be in leadership. So they are concerned with rent seeking. Their money goes there. They are concerned with security. When you ask Ambassador Awich to break for you security, you'll be amazed. They are only concerned with, stopping, opposition. So if Ugandans are a security threat, I want, because is Uganda at war? Are we at war? And perennially, their budget, one of the significant chunks of the money goes to security. And most of it is classified. And one wonders, are we at war? Is it internal security? And if you need all that money to maintain law and order within the country, aren't you inefficient? So that's why we are saying, look here, we all live in this country. This is our mother, this is our father, this is the only place we know. let's rethink our strategy. Let's redirect our country. Let's try to realize the potential of this country. And I think the Matthias Mpuga budget should be a serious point of consideration for the NRM, for as long as they are in power, but because very soon we are going to host them, and we are very serious. We are going to take you out very quickly, because I think that your government is
Power
taking
belongs
wrong,
to the people.
takes the wrong
Who
direction.
can take it out?
Power belongs to the people.
Very interesting engagement there between my colleagues. I don't know if the directors designed that you sit next to each other, but I beg that you hold the firepower as we move.
No,
Ladies and
we're very
gentlemen,
peaceful.
Harris brings about ignoring the threats, the direct threats to Awich. Harris talks about an important aspect, which is the productivity of the country. He seems to view the human rights approach as an investment into human capital that then expands the capacity of especially the young Ugandans, to produce more, that in the long run, expands our revenue base and our ability to spend more as a country. So if that is what I get from your analogy, I think that's a very good one. We have an issue right now in the UK. The countries, they have tried everything and they're shifting prime ministers here and then, but one of the most important indexes has shown that the average UK person is getting less and less productive. And therefore, the inevitable demise of the economy is just. So I think that's a very good analogy. And moving to our dear Honorable Alice Alaso, who has spent a lot of time in politics, but also a strong advocate for different issues. I would like to inquire from you, the alternative, the planning and the budgeting and allocation of resources vis-a-vis the utilization of resources. Which one should be more of a priority? Should we prioritize more on avoiding the leakages? Have we done enough to avoid the leakages, no matter the plan? Because we could as well implement the alternative budget, but in a system that is full of leaks. So what as Honorable Alice Alaso, do you think takes priority?
Thank you very much. Let me also say good morning, our viewers. But more importantly, because it is a Saturday to Easter, to wish everybody a blessed Easter. As Christians, we say Christ is risen indeed, and we pray that you will continue to walk in the knowledge of God. Now, having said that, thank you for having me here. This is a very important discussion. Yes, I do, like all our colleagues, think that the opposition, led by Matthias Mpuga, Honorable, have done a good job to consolidate all these positions and make them available to us, also make them available to government. Because previously people used to say the opposition, they have no alternatives, they have no ideas. Even when you spoke in parliament and it was clearly recorded in the Hansard, the NRM would run away with it. So now they can't run away. Matthias Mpuga has a book before you. You either read it or you either implement it or ignore it, but you can't try to belittle the opposition that they haven't done some work. And that goes for the state of nation also. I have seen that the opposition has now got into institutionalizing. They also do the address and bring out the issues that are important. So over to you, the people who are in power. If you don't want to read that, those are views, and those are very credible views. The budget process is anchored on so many things before I just really get there. The budget process is anchored on resources, as has been said. I only don't want to agree with my young brother. Uganda is not a poor country. We just have thieves in the granary. That's what we have. But we have the money, we have the resources, we have the weather, we have the human resource, we have everything. We are a rich country. We are a rich country that is sending its children to slavery in the Middle East, where there is a desert, a complete desert, but we are sending our people there. So we are a rich country and we have the resources that we need. The other thing that we need to remind ourselves is that then there is the aspect of budget implementation. Let me tell you, if the national resistance movement dared to implement one budget successfully, just one successfully.
In its current form.
Yes. Whether we adopt the governance approach, whether we adopt the human resource approach, what was the other one? Result-oriented something, and so many, we've had so many approaches. They, unfortunately, they no longer have the capacity to do that. If the NRM dared to get its own budget, the one they have budgeted right now, and implement it honestly, meticulously, it would make a very big difference. So the problem in this country is not the paperwork.
Yes.
The problem is then they get to implementation. And you see wolves tearing the country. We had a discussion on these iron sheets in Karamoja, and I said the problem is not that they even got it wrong. Let's assume that they got it wrong, but the iron sheets reached Karamoja to the correct person, to the right person.
Yeah.
They would make a difference. The problem here is money is budgeted. There is a lot of financial indiscipline in Uganda, to the extent that at budgeting process, every department, every accounting officer and politicians, everyone is looking for what is my share in this budget. So it's like we are collecting the country's resources, giving them a name in the budget, and then the implementers will go pick this one, takes their share. Instead of sending it to Teso, they take their share. Instead of sending it to Kisoro, that one takes their share. That is how things are happening in this country. So there's a lot of wastage. You look at the loans, because loans constitute a very big bulk of our budget. Look at the borrowing in this country. We've borrowed until it has reached us here, and we don't know whether we should sink or die because of the borrowing. Now, if you ask me to appraise those loans, where is the impact? Which loan has worked well? You can't literally find it. You find yourself trying to build a standard gauge something which has now become a ghost project. And yet you have borrowed money. And Ugandans, according to the budget of Matia Kasaija, who does not know when stolen iron sheets reach his compound, Ugandans are paying interest on all the money they have borrowed. You construct, an express highway, according to the budget here of government of Uganda. It is constructed as one of the most expensive projects in the whole world. Now, what is happening to this country? So again, it is not that we are broke. It is that the government in charge, the actors, are so financially indisciplined. We talked about corruption. I don't know whether we may have to stop using the word corruption. Maybe corruption is even nice. It is.
Of course, it is nice. It's criminal.
Coated.
Yes.
No. But it also looks like coated. If you tell my mother corruption, she might think it is a nice thing. Maybe we just call them thieves, robbers, gangsters, burglars.
Cartel.
A cartel.
It's a cartel.
Yeah. I think we better stop using that word, so that when we meet a minister like Goreti Kitutu,
we just call them NRA thieves.
We just say this is a thief who stole iron sheets. Then we meet another minister, we say this one is a burglar.
It's an organized cartel.
Yes. So there is that indiscipline. There is misuse of money, misuse of loans. Then there is wasteful expenditure. When you address the aspect of wasteful expenditure, and by the way, it is not that these things are not in the laws. The Public Finance Management Act has all those things. The Audit Act says don't do this and don't do the other. Public Finance says don't do this, do it this way. So it's not the lack of laws. It is all covered. But let me tell you the wasteful expenditure. You refuse to fix, what is that hospital where Honorable Dr. Chris Baryomunsi comes from? Which part of the country is that? Kabale. So you refuse to fix the hospital. Then the minister collapses from there. Kanungu. The hospital has no oxygen. The hospital has no drugs.
When was the hospital built again?
during, I think,
What
APC
else?
time.
You want to
Yes.
put the Congress there?
Yes.
That was that a rhetorical question?
Yeah, so the hospital is dilapidated. You don't fix the necessary things. You've been in power and you are the spokesperson defending the excesses and the bad things. Then you collapse from there. Then you, all 4, 5 of you, including my mother in Serere, we are made to pay to fly him wherever, India or anything. That kind of wasteful expenditure. I understand Joseph will speak to this perhaps if he has time. But the Mulago Hospital of those days could treat His Excellency, the President of Uganda. Tell me when our president has ever gone to Mulago, even for malaria. When? For him, his hospital is in State House, fully equipped, Germans, Cubans, Israelis, everybody. And then for you and I, we are. So that wasteful expenditure.
Yeah.
I also looked at what you call classified expenditure at some point. Of course, you first swear certain things that you will not talk about to them, and then they bring books that are meaningless to you. This is money. The bulk of the money in Uganda goes to the defense budget. And the good thing is we have a defense expert and a security expert here. So it goes there. But let me tell you, you cannot account. There used to be a time we think we have sent soldiers to Central African Republic, and they are moving in Central African Republic. They're also living like the rebels they are pursuing. Torn uniforms, no boots. Then me who is looking at this money they have called classified, I begin to wonder. Why isn't this classified if it is for security? Going to look after those soldiers in the Central African Republic. So this classified money is mainly the money that is used to bribe voters. How come you go into a by-election and you see people dishing out 50,000? I was in Sereri the other day. 50. Is this money from her mother's house or from his father's house? Where are these people getting their money? And you know, because voters are hungry, impoverished, deprived, they have nothing. So you go to their health center in Serere, health center 4, they have 1 doctor. They don't have Panadol. But here is a person from the NRM party looking for votes, now giving them 50,000. So either it is misuse, the rent seeking, the support renting, I do not know. But long and short of it is this government no longer has the goodwill or even the capacity to use our resources to benefit us. It must benefit them and not us.
Thank you very much. We have that is Honorable Alaso for you, with a very biographic recent experience with the muscle of these kinds of money. But over to you, Mr. Ochieno. We have Honorable Awich Pollar talking about different priorities in general. We have Harris talking about human capital, human rights focused budget being a human capital investment that in turn, increases the productivity of the nation, which in turn increases the revenue, and therefore more resources to be allocated. And then we have Honorable Alaso, who seems to, if she answered my question well, to agree that the issue might not be as much with the budgeting as it is with the implementation. What is your take on the Matia and the Matthias budgets?
First of all, I must say that for the first time in a very long time, and I'm not saying it lightly, that after submission of my sister Alice, I am almost content to give my time, like once upon a time somebody offered me their time in the studios, to give my time to her. Because I said we could as well pack our bags and go home if people had have ears to listen and really, and I know we have brains to contextualize what she said. She's really sort of summarized it all within the broader context of this regime. But number two, on the issue of the names, I recognize that there's an issue between Mattia and Matthias. And I think that is less important. To me, the more important thing is that I think Matia, who is the Minister of Finance, and we're discussing our public money, my grandfather's money and my great-grandchildren's money, that the guy in charge of those monies today happens to do almost what is the equivalent, effectively thieving our money, and goes onto television and boasts that he doesn't know how the monies ended up in his compound, especially considering that he is actually the person who holds our coffers, and those particular monies were dished, nearly 40 billion Uganda shillings, and to be taken to the poorest of the poor in this country. I don't know any legislator who this Easter, tomorrow, Jesus died yesterday for all of us, and particularly for the, those guys from Karamoja. And then tomorrow Jesus rises and says, many of them are boasting, down the road, he's risen for us. They've got the conscience. So Matia, the name is, to me, as an unfortunate name, as the leader of this thieving process, as I would wonder that I don't think it matters whether it's Matias, because if anything, this person, Matias' boss, is, we now know after 35 years, Tibiruhundra, Museveni. So Museveni had a name that we never knew. And I remember the 90s as a young man around your age, poor Dr. James Ranyarari, my chief in Uganda House, confined because parties were banned. And Ranyarari would tell Ugandans, this guy's name is called, and I'm told journalists could even fear writing. So now it's Museveni's official name, and people go on with it. So my good brother, Awich, sometimes I sympathize with you because it's very difficult to defend this NRA regime in many of these issues. But, you made a fair point. But that said, though, as a matter of procedure, as it were, it's possibly not a new thing, at least to credit this regime. And it's actually shocking that Pollar could suggest that because now the opposition can present an alternative budget, it's good news, the new Uganda after 40 years of a military dictatorship. No. It's a formality in democracies, to the extent actually that I would only correct if your leaders had sought my advice. Alternative budget report, in my opinion, should not come from the leader of opposition. Alternative budget report should come from the shadow Minister for Finance, who actually shadows, shadows the Minister for Finance giving an alter, because that's their remit. They would be the one doing this. Puga shadows Madame Nabanja, whom I understand also managed to get access to some stuff from Karamoja, as it were. So, so that is one. Number two, generally, usually, after a budget speech, the opposition should give a budget response in which they critique, they give their opinion about that budget is, and whether or not they decide they use that as an opportunity to respond or doing both. But ideally, the critique make formal critique, and I don't know what they normally would do in recent times, and that would be the shadow finance minister, and then the alternative budget. Yes, it is their views, their perspective. Now that said, it's a good attempt from their perspective. From a UPC's point of view, we would possibly not do as closely. They've done a good job. We would possibly do better. One, I noticed with interest that they've done transport and works, which is important,
Yes.
as a number one. Considering the infrastructure mess by this NRA regime, is shocking. It's almost criminal if you see what's happening in Kampala. As I said, I had a new car the other day, and the members of parliament, you buy, you have big cars that are paid for my money. But I bought a new car the other day, and within 2 months, one of it went a journey to the north and back, and I had to pay nearly another $1 million shillings because of Kampala streets. Kampala, our national capital. So you can actually see the pride of this regime. Number two, the NRA budget talks about pushing monies for national railways, which Alice is referring to.
Yeah.
Can you imagine these guys found our rail networks and killed them, and 40 years now they're seeking to revive, and even that revision is mired in corruption and in incompetence, and we don't know whether to start up.
But
So
they say that two negatives don't make it right.
it's an absolute negative. It's criminal then. So two negatives. In this case, the negative of NRA by killing it and doing what they're doing, and they're not even doing it, they're doing it the Loboa way, is actually much more criminal. So it's a very terrible negative in this case. But so the focus on number one on in terms of money is involved on infrastructure, as it were, is understandable. But number two, health, I totally also agree. I'm actually quite surprised, Harris, that you put education that far.
Yeah.
One of the risky things, and you're a young man, and I hope in future you vote UPC, the two of you particularly. You're a young man. What this country badly needs is at least a huge investment in education.
I agree.
Huge investment in education. In fact, contextualizing both of the good points about building for the future.
Yeah.
It's about skilling ourselves. But one of the reasons why maybe Robert's team, I'm not going to push on fire, has got themselves used to the idea that, education can come number 6 is simply because NR has been in power so much that your leader, I'm not attacking him, I'm putting it pretty well, your leader grew up and found privatized education, meaning education sector had been killed. So the idea of the education system as it is at the moment, people think it's okay. I noticed some of your observations suggesting that that opposition are now recognizing the inspectorate of schools as an important thing. No, the issue is not inspectorate of schools. The issue is that government should claim back, and the future UPC government will do that, claim back the role of the state in educating and equipping the citizens. So what do we do? So part of our broader infrastructure should include education infrastructure.
Yeah.
So therefore, building public schools, equipping them, giving them capacities, giving them the teachers scholastic materials, enabling teaching staff, making sure that therefore ordinary schools, and there are many, so actually the budget would be so much, as it were from that point of view, that the more you do that, the less, I don't know, Pollar may have a school in Aduku, a private school in Aduku, because these days almost everyone has a school. And sometimes some of these schools these days, some people's living rooms or extensions are schools. And some of them actually live in some people's former houses or universities. So that's how bad this NL regime has actually done it, meaning the human capital thing that actually, in this case, the robots are trying to check, but checking it possibly in the wrong way. So we need to reinvest hugely in public education to ensure, therefore, that people with private schools, I'm afraid, we will have to review these things. Private schools existed in the 60s and indeed in the 80s. Private education should be privilege, not an entitlement. So if you choose that you want to take your child to an earlier school because you're posh and big, so long as you've not stolen our money, take them. But no, Nakasero Primary School.
And Caltech of those days.
Indeed, of course, that I said, but they were there, but people would go there. But then Makero High School, and you're absolutely right that they existed. Makero High, Caltech were there. I went to Kololo High, when I came from Wiri public school, but the alternative simply because I missed a little bit part of my personal many other issues. I was supposed to have returned to Wiri, or if anything, I would have gone to the Kisubi that I wanted at the time. But unlike which is mission school. But
how about in Tare?
No, in Tare I wouldn't go to school because Tare school is such a bad mannered school. They teach people how to go through the law. They go to the bushes, but many of them are general clever people.
Liberators.
No, that's not a bad thing. But no. So you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So really, you get opportunities to go to the schools that you build. The Toro colleges with this school. I mean, Toro was just incapacitated. The Teso College at Lloyd, the Bukedi College Kachongas, the Wanyange Girls schools. So people go to those schools. The private schools is privileges if you choose to go so.
Yeah.
So in education, and I'm sorry I'm going on and on, those are the things we need to do. And at least the job we have as alternative governments of the future, Harris, yourself and I, and my young man, I hope, and I know in normal times, Pollar come, because we need to build this country going forward, all of us. The future in how we kill the more than 1 trillion shilling corruption money. Reconstitute that money objectively, almost non-partisan, because what I'm saying is not about UPC versus the others. No, it's the genuine, what we need to do for this country is huge amount of work. So we need to recalibrate education in such a manner that it's radical, it is revolutionary, and revolutionary from the point of view of an ideological revolution, the UPC way of big government. So I would bring education very close to health and, yes, understandably, infrastructure. I noticed, though, that the tourism, very far bottom, in this case. I'm a bit surprised, but possibly understandably, because what is required in tourism is slightly much more innovation.
Yeah.
But, poor Wekesa, my good friend Amos Wekesa, can shout and shout and shout until the other day, I think, Museveni noticed him and I saw him in State House. So possibly all you need is Wekesa, a bit of common sense, a bit of less corruption, and then reconstitute. But tourism needs a lot, much more injection, but more than the presidency.
Yeah.
But that said, of course, you'll realize, Alice, that once you've sorted public transportation infrastructure, once you've sorted out education, which means implies implication, including in terms of the skills of people whom we have, and so the national character, including the guys who receive our tourists from Entebbe, Malaba, and Nimule, and Busia, and the other end in Katuna. Once you've done that, also, it also, if you like, a slip off from education, quality of our staff, quality of our young people, our kind of national and character. The investments that UPC put in a young man, you don't even know this, that we built, regional hotels. One of the first things the Musevenis went for, including your White Horse in Kabul. They went and picked themselves to enrich themselves because they came from sleepers. They came with sleepers from the bushes. So they had to quickly go ahead and enrich themselves. Now, even these ones completely mismanaged them. So, granted, these are private, and I think a future UPC government would possibly substantially review possibilities of reclaiming some of these things. Because when you say that, some guys in NRA, and I'm sure you're a young conservative, you're a good guy, by the way, think that market, yes, private, good, public. No. As I said before, the Chinese companies controlling the Republic of Uganda, are public Chinese organizations. So there is a mix, there's space for the market, But to radically change this country and to radically change this continent, we will need to have a very big government role in Uganda and therefore in Africa. And so therefore, including tourism, so reviewing about the role of Uganda hotels, and beyond maybe reclaiming some of those, particularly those that have been taken in a dubious way, working side by side with private hotels. And of course, the hotel industry has grown. Again, you cannot say that doing that we're turning into a communist state. So for the moment, I think those are some of the things I would quickly say. But yes, you're absolutely right, Alice. This thing called defense. Last point. Pollar, just indeed, I'm really sorry. Pollar, I'm actually surprised that after 40 years, you are saying that we're investing in security because investing in security is going to give us, just like I think both Harris and Ali said, what investment in security after 40 years do you translate to net benefits to the exchequer in terms of generating resources? What is it? It's a patronizing thing, it's a political thing, it's a psychological thing, it's teaching Ugandans that, to the extent that there are people who say that, well, if there is no Museveni, there is no peace, and so, let the guy go down there, you can even allow his son or his grandchildren or his other in-laws come in, whatever. We don't want war because I've got my shop to run. No, that is not the case. But quickly, in conclusion, no, sectors that are productive. Agriculture, I didn't even mention it, I know I've gone on and on and on. Agriculture, we would again give it much more priority than you guys have given today. UPC would, and I think it needs to be done because those are the key productive sectors. The final point, shocking figures given. Shocking figures, young man.
Final.
Shocking figures this young man has given of 15 million.
I think we need to keep that for the second part. So thank you very much. And if I'm to denote what my elder brother Ochieno has been saying is basically the budget ought to focus on strategic areas, one of them being education. That is very core to what Harris and complements what Harris was saying, that in terms of human capital for human development, it needs to be prioritized. And he noted that while the Harrises have presented an alternative, education is way too low in that alternative. It needs to be improved. And then he goes on to also insist that tourism, which in a globalized world, every country needs to know its comparative advantages, also ought to be invested in. The rest was a lot of UPC
Facts.
UPC ideologue. Yeah, but basically that's what we have. Stay tuned. We will continue with this discussion in the second round, as we have our brother Awich Pollar also answer some of the accusations. There were threats.
Issues raised.
There were issues.
There are no threats, though.
Among others. So
just
thank you very
issues.
much for tuning in. This is a Focus on Parliament, where we dissect issues that are happening, that matter to you. The Parliament is a representative of all of us, and therefore it is very important that we understand and dissect some of the issues that they discuss. Thank you very much, and stay tuned.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back to the show, our dear viewers. Today, as I announced earlier, we have amazing guests who we will continue to dissect different issues. Our dear viewers, I'd like to firstly remind you that the importance of discussing the national budget and the alternative budget. Needless to remind is that every time you move out, every time you take a step, every time you buy a cup of tea, every time you buy sugar, every time you buy clothes for your mother, every time you earn salary, you contribute to this consolidated fund. That forms the pool from which our budget is derived. So you have a strong interest in the way our money is appropriated, but also implemented, like Honorable Alaso was emphasizing. Thank you very much for staying on with us. We are going to continue with this discussion. In the first session, we had a lot of in-depth analysis on the different aspects from a government perspective, from our brother from NUP, from Honorable Alaso, and then a lot of strategic perspectives from my brother, Honorable Ochieno. And we would like to continue, but firstly, offering an opportunity to our brother, Awich Pollar, to answer a variety of issues, threats, comments that were sent over to him.
No threat.
Well, thank you so much. There's no threat as such.
Just before you go in, we had Harris talking about how for the last 20 years, your emphasis has been on allocating resources where they serve to retain power the most. And we had Honorable Alaso talking about the failure of government in implementation of whatever form of budget is released. And then we had our brother Ochieno also talking about how the budget doesn't address strategic needs, but also doesn't serve our comparative advantages in areas like tourism. What do you have to say in response to those?
Well, I will answer their concerns, but There's one thing which appears simple, but I thought I could make it clear.
Yeah.
You see, as we appear on this television, we are not only talking about government functions, activities, but we're also educating the young ones on how they communicate.
That's
so
correct.
to that extent, when I raise the issue of the differences in names, we should stick to it, because even if you put an affidavit, you swear an affidavit with one of the names, it will be defective. Court will throw it out. This is not Matthias Kasaija. This is Matthias. Court will throw it out.
Yes.
So when we talk and communicate to children, and I know they follow Honorable Alaso so much because I also admire communication skills. So we should really make them know that we mean what we say and we say what we mean. For example, there's this joke in illegal drafting. God met a young boy, and the young boy was happy to meet God. So God asking my child, what do you want? The boy made 3 prayers. 1, let me grow up. Meaning corona, what should not kill me? God said, granted. 2, when I grow up, let me drive a big vehicle. Mark the word vehicle. God said, granted. 3, said, Father, that big vehicle should be full of beautiful girls. God said, granted. I've granted you all the 3. But as we talk now, the boy is driving a bus for Namagonga girls. Would he cry? Has he died? No. Is a bus a small car? A small vehicle? It is big. And Namagonga girls not beautiful? Yes. So, talk what you mean, because what you say will be answered in your prayers. So you just don't talk what I mean Matthias, but I mean Mattia, and we should communicate what we mean and mean what we talk.
I give you credit. That's real Terry.
Talk what you mean and mean what you don't say. Okay, really, man. Yes. So he wanted a car, maybe a Land Cruiser. He said a big vehicle. He wanted a girlfriend, then he said beautiful girls. So you get a bus instead of a car, and you get school girls in hundreds, school children in hundreds, instead of your girlfriend. Yes. So as we teach people to communicate, we should talk what we mean and mean what we talk.
Yeah.
Now, there's a comment about 15 million of unemployed and not in school. I think this on a higher side, because maybe it doesn't take in relationship to the fact that there are things that we don't see as employment. Agriculture, informal employment. So to get 15 million population which is lost, it is not possible. They are there, but could be 2 million. But the majority of our people are employed. So I like to say that that data is not correct. The other thing is that connected to the 15 million, there's the issue of slavery in Middle East. I've often explained this. You see, the whole idea of labor migration is global.
Yes.
To the extent that United Nations has come up with a convention called Convention on Migrant Workers. Because the world knows that this side of the globe may want this labor. This side may not want this labor. This one. I boarded a bus in Germany, for example.
Yes.
And I went and told my host, a professor, that professor, it seems I boarded a wrong bus. He asked me why. I said, the average person in the bus was 65 years old. He said, but that is a population here. There are no young people. So to the extent that some part of the world has no labor. So imagine a country like Philippines. Philippines export 11 million nurses abroad. 11 million. Uganda and Middle East is less than 1 million. So Colombia, Colombia has 10 million workers in America. To the extent that Colombia even acted a movie saying 1 minute without Colombian. Because they are telling Americans, you are so proud of your America.
But what do you have to say about the quality?
Yes. I will answer you. Why don't you let me finish? How do you know it is not packaged in what I'm saying?
No.
Let me finish, then you said you forgot this.
No,
let me finish, then you say.
Yes.
So, a country like Colombia, Mexico has 10 million workers in America. Yes. 10 times what we send in Middle East. So, the issue of migrant workers is a global thing. Accepted, and UN even passed a convention. The convention is supposed to protect workers there and here. Now, if we talk of migrant workers, the issue that we can drive on is, would we strive to also export quality workers? Like the case of Philippine talking of nurses, like the case of exporting scientists or others. But the issue of workers going outside the country, you can't control it. If anything, Kenya and Tanzania even export more than us in Middle East. We are the least.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to refocus there, and Alice, you'll have a chance to reply.
So the concern of quality, the concern of professional is valid.
I'd like to refocus the conversation on some of the points that were raised.
I'm raising the issue of slavery in Middle East.
Yes, and let me clarify it. Okay. You know, it can't be responded to out of context.
Yes, please.
I know that Major is a very, very brilliant person. Yes. I know him. I've met him before. So what he's deliberately doing here is towing the wrong angle of my submission. And I don't want it to go that way.
Please clarify.
When I talk about slavery in the Middle East, it's not that I am not cognizant of the International Labour Organization, protocols and whatever. No, it's not that. It's not that I actually, fortunately, traveled to Manila once in a lifetime and saw the arrangements for migrant labor in the Philippines.
Yes.
And they really have them all over the world.
Yes.
But let me tell you, what Uganda has refused to do for its young girls, the cream of this country, between 7 and 24 or 30 that are traveling out every day. You need to go to Entebbe now. You see over 300 of them living. From the moment they leave, the whole process is not streamlined. And that's why I stand by that word slavery. Because you are being taken from the start. They take you and they take away your passport. Yeah. Which part of the world is that? So you become a citizenless human being in the Middle East. 2, you have any complaint, you don't have any cause where you can go. 3, these companies are mushrooming every other day. Some of them are very closely connected human beings. You can't touch them. 4, our embassies. Major Awich, you are part of the deployments in the foreign affairs. You know, some of the people we've taken there to run the foreign affairs mandate for this country, you only need to lose an election and then you are carried. Whether you've had an exposure to diplomatic career or not. And then you know the budget we give to those. They can't even make calls. They have to wait for a dinner and then have a cocktail. That is all. There are times our embassies, I went auditing embassies. I went to a number of them when I was chairperson PAC.
Maybe just conclude because it was a side.
Yes. So we are talking about the inability of our country to protect the prime of its labor force and subjecting them to a very degrading atmosphere when other countries, like he has said, are getting the most out of that.
Yes. Thank you very much. Just before we bring in Harris, Honorable Major Awich Pollar, could you please
Yes,
conclude?
I was right. But I like to say, if it is the operational aspect, because we have an act, we have procedures and the Ministry of Labor. If it is on the challenges or the weaknesses in the operationality of this, I concur with Honorable. And we want the best out of it. But I want to just say that labor migration is not a unique thing. If it is for tightening the loose nuts that are to protect our people, we agree. Now, the other thing I wanted to say is that on the issue of the budget per se, I wouldn't be surprised that Mpuga, who presented this budget, if tomorrow it became government, he would actually snatch the other one and operationalize it. He would even abandon his own.
That is the first question I asked you.
He would actually say, okay, sorry, dear brothers and sisters, we had this, but I think we better use this one. Meaning that the challenges that I had mentioned earlier, including resources, when you are in state power, the views, your horizon is different.
Yes.
For example, we are talking of maintaining power. Naturally, Let me say this. You cannot be elected by the people. People give you a mandate and you lose it. Then what have you done to the people? In fact, if people knew that we are going to elect you and you can't keep the power, then we'd rather vote somebody else. Then you do. But again, this leads me to unpackaging security.
Yes, please.
I wanted to unpackage security in that security is wide.
Yes.
We have moved at a point of training and modernization. Modernization means, therefore, the equipments that we used to use in what we call mobile, carrying the light weapons on your back and all this has changed. Now, the soft power and the machines even become more expensive than the past. In the past, what we needed was a soldier and mobile on his feet with a rifle, bullets, and food. So that's why sometimes our friends don't see that in the absence of internal conflict visible like we had, where is the budget going? But also remember, we still have troops in Somalia, we still have troops in DRC, we still have troops in the Central African Republic, we still have them.
What do you have to say about the classified budget? Just before you leave that, could you comment on the classified budget, which was a concern of Honorable Alice as well?
The classified budget is acceptable in law and in all countries. What it means is that to protect national security, there's something you're not going to put in a budget document which is open to all you who would have been enemies. So they will know, oh, they have bought this. We saw it in the budget. They have bought this equipment. We show it in the budget. And I think procedures was being developed to give accessibility to a few members of the parliament to access that classified budget. And you would access it with a view that you actually access it on, in quotes and quote, on us. In other words, you are bound by the confidentiality to it. So it's not as classified as people think. It's only to avoid the enemies having access to it. Okay?
But they misuse.
If it is already in the budget and members have seen, then it is not misused.
You need to address, which is the implementation bit of, because Honorable Alice also agrees that the budget is not really her concern, but rather the leakages during implementation.
That is it. Here I'd noted as budget discipline.
Yes.
It is all our concern. It's all our cry.
Yes.
To the extent that we had almost thought of a system in party to say, you, government, we as a party, we got the mandate from the people for 5 years. When we won election, we form you, government. So we are the principal, you are the agent. You are our agent. So for that reason, we even think of a periodic review so that we see that first of all, following the manifesto, but secondly, also, there's no leakage. So as far as leakage is concerned, I concur even with the Congress, I concur with the migrant, we really must address it. And whoever does it should be punished. And to an extreme punishment, deterrent that is. So as far as budget discipline is concerned, we don't condone it. So it's our concern.
Yeah, thank you, Honor. And you will have a moment to conclude most of your remarks. Just moving to my brother Harris. On this panel, you represent a young generation, a generation that has its own strategic issues. We have not technically population explosion, but a very huge increase in the number of young people in the country. I believe both of us are above the average age. We're actually old Ugandans. There was also a big lot of COVID children that will eventually haunt the country strategically a few years from now. So as a young person, do you think that this budget, both the national and the alternative, address some of our strategic challenges for the nation? Thank you.
My brother Awich has an enviable job. I listened to him and I sympathize, but you could tell that he's a brilliant person. Yeah, because honestly,
very accomplished.
Speaking generalistically, and you say we recognize the failures. So why don't you be civil enough and resign? Because when you fail, when you're given a job and you fail and you acknowledge that I've failed, You resign.
Have I
Why should
accepted?
you hang him? Why should you hang him?
Have I accepted? We are
Yes,
fair?
you have accepted
That
there is corruption, which
no,
you
no, no.
cannot
I
curb.
said budget discipline is
Yeah.
our concern.
Corruption is
Does
a
that
form
mean
of-
the same thing like
corruption is a form of budgeting discipline, and your commander-in-chief has acknowledged that some people cannot be checked.
and we have arraigned many in court.
No, himself and
But he says he was given the mandate by the people.
yes,
And
and,
so he has
and clearly he has come out on several platforms to say, no, there are people who are above reproach.
Yes.
Among them, military officers, the IGG, his IGG, former IGG, Honorable Mulyagonja said that people who are corrupt are behind the president. We have seen the parliament conduct probes, and when the probes are done, there are no indictments because people who are implicated in those probes are protected by the president. So the financial discipline, the budget discipline we are talking about here, Mr. Awich, is failed first and foremost by the president himself.
Yes.
And that's a big indictment. And this reminds me of what happened just yesterday, members, that a former USS president has been indicted for offenses he committed in office. I think that Museveni should have been indicted a long time ago, should have been impeached. The number of offenses Museveni has committed against the constitution of Uganda alone, he should have been impeached long time ago. And I think the example of America gives us a comparative advantage. Let me come to your question of our hopes as young people.
Yes.
My first remark is that even if you had the most excellent budget, for as long as you have an indisciplined executive, you can't go far with it. Even if we had a budget of 100 trillion.
That's what Alice was saying.
Yes, and I think that's what Alice put aptly so well.
Yeah.
That even if you have 100 trillion, if you don't have an implementation framework, if you don't have competent technical officers who are actually going to go through every A and Z of the implementation strategy, you're not going to go anywhere. And my brother, what he said, that if you don't have a strategic direction, it's like a boat on a sea with a captain but with no map. They don't know where they're going. They don't know when to tell when they have landed, whether they have lost, whether you can never tell. And that's the reality of Mr. Museveni's government. If you ask Mr. Awich today and he say, what's the development strategic direction of this country? He won't tell you. Today we are talking about industrialization. Tomorrow we are talking about agriculture and mechanization. The other time we are talking about tourism. The other day we are talking about, now they are talking about standard gauge railway, which is
For the third time.
Well, for the third time, which is a good thing, but you don't have...
A good thing that sank anyway.
Yes.
Because they killed it.
Yes. Yeah. And then, even when you're talking about the standard, the standard gauge railway, internally, you don't have young people who are going to move from Uganda to Kenya to Tanzania to trade, to work there, because they don't have the capacities. You don't have industries which are going to produce goods, which you're going to trade. So yes, it's a beautiful thing. It's going to enhance transport, but transport for who?
And for what?
For what? So that shows you clearly that we are doing stuff haphazardly.
Yeah.
And for as long as we have a regime that is tired, thinking about this whole thing, it's a good thing to have a conversation. As Ugandans, we shouldn't lose hope. But I think that even the bigger conversation, a much more meaningful conversation should be, how do we help Mr. Awich and his... But we would like to retain Awich. When we take over power. We would like to retain the rights of it.
It's a good
Power belongs to the people. The people will
So
decide.
that moderator, the bigger conversation is
Yes.
on how fast can we eject Mr. Museveni and the cartel around him. That's the biggest conversation.
So that is the strategic direction for the youth in your...
Yeah, but in terms of substantive, in terms of details,
Yes.
we have pointed the leader of opposition, and then you have showed Ugandans that we can actually recover a minimum of 10 trillion. Every financial year we can recover 10 trillion from tax exemptions. And we are saying that everyone must pay the taxes. Why bring in foreigners, exempt them from paying taxes, and then your domestic investors are paying a lot of taxes? And even economic analysis have indicated that tax exemptions do not necessarily give you a competitive advantage in as far as attracting foreign direct investment is concerned. So it's the wastage. So we are saying as the opposition that we are going to cut that. Two, we are saying that we need zero domestic borrowing. Why? Because domestic borrowing crowds out private sector. It makes the cost of borrowing very, very expensive. It's already very high. In some countries like China, the interest rate is close to is below 1%. Yeah. Here, if you a private investor in this country, you borrow from commercial banks, the interest rate is above 20%. Now that's simply madness. That's total madness. You can never develop an investment strategy in a country where the cost of money is above 20%. And so we are saying one of the reasons the cost of borrowing is high in this country is because the government is competing with the private sector. So what do you do that? Eliminate internal borrowing, encourage external borrowing. But also, when you borrow, be more prudent, be frugal. Let your interests, let your investments be effective. Let them be strategic so that you're able to pay back the money. Now, we have a debt to GDP ratio at 53. Now, that's according to economic...
more,
yes, that's above what is recommended levels for sustainability, meaning that we're already in the danger zone. Remember, we have a history of debt forgiveness. So these guys get the money, they eat it, they take their girlfriends out. When you look at the travels of department officers, the parliament.
And without prejudice, what do the female ones do? Because there are also women there without prejudice.
Yeah. I mean, even the women have their.
And they buy big cars.
They buy. Even
for
women,
their boys.
even women. I mean, they also maybe men do it more, but even women can pay for sexual favors. They do it. But the point is, there is a lot of wastage at all levels. And this government, even if you gave them $100 billion, they're still going to waste it without a strategy.
I think, Harris, you bring in a very important point. A lot of the pointers in one of the core areas in the alternative budget is the monetary adjustments that include those points you've talked about. I think you only left out corruption, which they said they would recover at least 1 trillion. But
just one more point. I also wanted, in 30 seconds, I also wanted to tell my brothers, my brother Awich and the viewers, that when you look at the structure of President Museveni's budget for the last 37 years, it is over 80%, 85% recurrent expenditure. Recurrent expenditure means you're paying salaries and debt servicing and other things that are not developmental, they are not investment oriented. That is compared to Tanzania, which spends 34% of its budget on investment, development financing. Kenya, they also spend around the same amount, I think 34% on investment or development financing. So the budget they are boasting over, it is money for eating. So how are you when they're eating?
And thank you very much, Harris, for those interesting pointers. I would like to move on to Honorable Alice Alaso, who, by the way, is the national coordinator of the Alliance for National Transition. I had omitted that earlier. Transformation. I had omitted that earlier. I would like you to deliberate on some of the issues that Honorable Pollar which raised, but also to give us a future. What is the final effect of this alternative budget? Will it just end up as a political show? Are there ways to bring it into action, creative ways? It may not be taken over by it. I believe it's romantic thinking to think Pollar which will take your budget up. But then what are the ways that within this context, some of these issues can be implemented?
I want to first and foremost to convince myself, and I hope I can convince the viewers, that what we desperately need is to recover the state. The level of state capture here is terrible. If the party that constitutes the government is also lamenting, then there is something that has gone absolutely wrong with the animal we call state. It has been captured by mafia, by thugs, and until we are able to capture the state.
By lamenting, do you mean the points where
I want to know.
Pollar agrees with
How
you?
did I lament?
They're struggling with financial discipline.
Yeah, struggling with financial
Kindly
discipline.
proceed.
They are telling the agency they put in place, please behave well. So you see, the agency has captured the state, and the party is also lamenting. So we really need to begin thinking seriously as Ugandans on how we will recover the state from the mafia. Two, on how, and at the ANT we spend a lot of time looking at how we will manage the transition, because if the transition from the mafia regime is not managed well, the state will the country can collapse completely, and we can have a Somalia here, we can have a something gone totally haywire. So those for me are the key things, and we need to begin to inculcate values into leadership. It doesn't matter, you change to another president, you change to another parliament, you get a group of thugs. It's time we begin to focus on values-based leadership, men and women of integrity. They are all over. There are still many good Ugandans, and I think they should come up. There are even some of them in the NRM. They should come up. The problem is we've relinquished our duties as good Ugandans and said, okay, as long as there is one unaccountable man, the rest of us surrender. We should not surrender our country because we don't even have another. And so for me, a budget, I can understand my brother Matthias Mpuga and the team in parliament. They have to do what is within their ability. Bring out these alternatives, whether they are respected or not, and we don't even need to critique them so much on the amounts or whatever. There is so much undeclared money in this country and so on and so forth. But they have tried to express, and that is the essence of the opposition. The opposition the major thing is for them to express their position and then leave the majority to do whatever they want. Those NRM numbers in parliament will do anything for the NRM. Unfortunately, I wish they could do anything and everything for ordinary Ugandans. Sometimes they don't do that. And so for me, there are 3-4 areas that I would also want to take out for purposes of emphasis.
Yes, please.
The question of productivity, which Harris talked about, agriculture. Uganda is a signatory to the Maputo Protocol. 10% of their budget, the Matia, we shouldn't even be talking about the Matthias budget. We should be talking about the Matia budget. The Matia budget up to today has failed to allocate 10% to the agricultural sector, and that is dangerous. And then the question of education. Up to now, one area that the Ministry of Education and this government have really refused to own up is the early childhood education. If you don't shape these fellows when they are still young, you are in trouble. Unfortunately, the government seems to be measuring on creating the gap between the poor and the rich, the literate and the illiterate every other day. Look, I would have gone into detail, but I didn't have the opportunity to look into this or to look into even what was earlier on presented. There is what they call a new curriculum. I have been to some of the best schools in this country. Some children go there, so I check on them. There's a new curriculum that is being rolled out. It is now in its third year in secondary, but there are no textbooks. What does government want to do to us? To kill our children, to kill our destiny. You have no textbooks, they can't be competitive in the market. You came up with good idea, creative thinking, creative work, but there are no guidelines. Teachers are not oriented. And we are all sitting here and watching. And the Ministry of Education is thinking they're doing a good job. You're doing disaster to our children. So I am very, very concerned that if that new curriculum is not given the attention, the resources, the money, we are going to lose another generation. The third thing, for me is the judiciary. What do you call the judiciary? I see human rights approach, judiciary, more money, more money. The judiciary in Uganda needs moral rehabilitation. I have appeared before them. The things they have done to me, you can't do to ordinary Ugandans. So I think we need to begin either praying, now that it is Easter weekend, somebody begin to pray that God delivers the people who deliver justice in this country, so that they stop trading justice. The other aspect for me, which is of the security nature, Major Awich, what we want is when the UPDF is deployed in Somalia. Okay, let's talk about the DRC currently. What we would like to see is the dividends of our sons shedding their lives in the DRC, shedding their blood. We would like to see trade. I went to Kinshasa, where we have spent time fighting to help protect the people in the Eastern DRC and ourselves. But the major trading partners are not us. And as ordinary Ugandans, even South Sudan, we would like to see that, okay, we championed the pacification of the place. Please stabilize the place, safeguard our lives, so that we, instead, whenever we send our sons and daughters, whether it's South Sudan or wherever, you find it is our neighbors, the Kenyans. Thank God they're in the part of the East African community. They're the ones who are maximizing trade with those areas. And the next time you hear Ugandans' vehicles burnt at the border, and then some son of somebody is trying to make capital out of that, I really think that is not good. So we want to see dividends from the security budget. Can you imagine that? The police in Uganda, the investigation arm of the police is the least funded. Least funded. So you have people, human rights, you have people who are held in custody beyond 48 hours, even 100 days, that you are still establishing what offenses they committed. But you have a budget which is big for security. Give the police money. Give prosecution money. Let us see the basic human rights being protected. Then we know. But anyway, as I said, until we have values-based leadership in this country, and until we recover the state, we are in trouble.
Just thank you very much, Honorable Alice, for those interesting submissions. My brother, elder brother Ochieno, you appear to have an alternative budget in your first submission, with addressing a lot of strategic areas. What do you think is a way forward in terms of appropriation, but also implementation of national resources for this country?
I think regime change, you know, Alice has said it, everyone else here seems to have said it, including Pollar. Recognition that this regime is tired. You know,
I said power belongs to the people.
Indeed, so power should return to the people, because at the moment it's in the hands of a man plus his family and basically a few followers of his. And everything they're trying to do is to invest in sustaining and maintaining that power. And remember, fellow citizens, that particularly most of you watching, you were not born when these guys came to town. I will tell you officially, they were not elected. So nobody elected Mr. Museveni, and he stayed there for 10 years before he had some kind of charade with Dr. Semugere. And then after that, it was another 20 years until UPC liberated you guys through the courts to have an open competitive politics. And by then, unfortunately, it was 20 years of NRA, and the grounds had so fundamentally shifted that what my sister Alice is talking about and the experience they had, and the early people to try and translate the constitutional change into a much more practical, applicable political process that would guide the future of this country. I think that by whichever way the regime changes, it must change. But what really needs to happen is that the young people of this country need to wake up. At the moment, a very critical element of Ugandan elite, let me speak like sometimes Kizza Besigye in his frustrations, that part of the problem is we ourselves, elite, we're possibly rather comfortable. I'm not, Ochieno is not comfortable. I've never been comfortable since these guys came to power. And I told you guys that you couldn't depend on him. You know, a section of Ugandan elite think that in as long as we can afford, they can afford their good cars, in as long as they can afford to fuel their cars, in as long as they can afford their houses, including some which may have been bought using dubious money, in as long as they can afford to take their children to competitive good schools, regardless of what schools they are, so long as the children also meet the criteria of the top cream of maybe top 10, top 20, all is okay. And then as long as once in a while there is medical challenges and crises, they can afford to go to these private hospitals, or perhaps even some of the public ones, and bribe their way through and they sort of themselves, sort of their health, it's okay. And for some of them, actually, they work extremely hard because they can afford to take their family members or indeed themselves abroad. No, that Ugandan elite, whatever it is, that reality is not going to be sustainable for our children.
Yes.
So I think what needs to be done is that the Ugandan elite,
And this is also your final remark.
indeed, wake up to see examples by predominantly Kenyan elite, where at least today in Kenya, across the political divide, including people who support Ruto, when a particular national issue comes, notwithstanding all the challenges they face, they will critique reasonably objectively, talking about one Kenya looking forward and possibilities of the country they want for themselves. Now, and since we're not particularly sure how much of my generation and crop of elite, myself, Alice and Tal, are able to do that, the burden of responsibility, unfortunately, at the moment, lies with the youth of this country. You need to detox our history. You need to detox the current realities. You need to detox the question of security that Pollar, Awich is talking about, and say this country belongs to us, to you guys, but knowing very well that whatever happens, whether Mr. Museveni likes it or not, this is official declaration, in 20 years' time, he will not be president because he will not have the capacity to govern this country. So what happens?
Yes.
What happens is that some younger Ugandans will need to be able to take that. So young Ugandans need to begin to critique, ask questions. And I think, as has already been said, some of the conversation we're having earlier today, I think it's actually quite important that we critique the opposition alternative in the sense that what we're trying to do is to educate the population. And one thing which is possibly partially lacking there, actually, Harris, is that when some of these submissions are made, they're made in a situation in which there's a free media, free press, free opportunity, a much more educated population that is able to follow what we're saying. They see that, Kumbe Mr. Museveni has told us about this Emyoga thing 10 times, but it did not work. So, told about this parish development thing, it is neither here nor there. Actually, the good guys, there's an alternative group of good guys who come up with this, and they're saying actually it can be done on smaller money, prudence, fiscal and taxation policies and programs that are able to make sure that, yes, we review maybe ways in which we tax particular rich, and the rich here are really the top rich, not the rich who earn 10 million Uganda shillings for argument's sake,
Mr. Ochieno, our time is
I know.
spent.
No, but
if you could also just send a final message to the viewers.
In a minute. I'm wrapping it up. Yeah. So do that in such a manner that the population of this country, the young guys know that well. You can use fiscal and taxation policies and programs to make sure that with the money that we have, as Alice was trying to say, you're able to deliver some of the things that, because the majority of young Ugandans today they don't think it is possible to have medicine in a Serere health facilities or in a Bugiri hospital. They don't believe because they've never seen it happen. And we're telling them it is possible. But I'm trying to say that the future belongs to them. So conversations about this gives opportunity for the citizens, the voters, to critique alternative political leaders and or programs, but also alternative programs that exposes NRA continued corruption. Then final thing, whatever happens, you young Ugandans, make sure that our looted monies are recovered. If we recovered looted monies in this country, there's no reason why the Mpuga budget cannot be possibly implemented. Trust the servo, and then you have a cry.
Thank you very much.
Have a revolution.
Thank you very much,
in
Mr. Ochieno. That is a message from Mr. Ochieno. Over to you, the young people. We are having our conclusive remarks. A lot of our time is fast spent, and I would request, starting from Honorable Alice, moving towards Honorable Pollar, that we send a statement briefly to the general public, to the viewers, to the young people, but also to the parliamentarians who represent them? Your final words.
To really fellow Ugandans, where we are, our levels of trust in government are at an all-time low, and we cannot count on them anymore to do what a government mandate is. Without the instrument of state and coercion and power, perhaps we would tell them stop and pack and go. But since they are still there, I want us to begin engaging seriously on the transition process for this country, because we must recover this captured state. And lastly, to all of you viewers, I wish you a very blessed and a very happy Easter. Remember, values matter. And once you have values-based leadership, then you run the affairs entrusted to you better. The Lord bless you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Alice, with a very motherly outro right there. I know a lot of the gentlemen will leave bitter, but at least Alice leaves you with a warm message. Honorable Harris, please.
I want to conclude with 3 remarks. The first one is to wish our viewers a happy Easter. Wish them joy and happiness during the celebrations. Point number 2 is to call the reality in Uganda what it is. And that is a situation of state capture. We are under state capture, and the best way out, the only way we can have a meaningful budget. Budget is a plan. It's an act of parliament. Therefore, it is a law that is going to transform lives of Ugandans. The best way is to first have a responsible leadership, and a responsible leadership that works for the people. And the government of Museveni, as we know it cannot wash itself clean. So we must do away with it, and this is a responsibility of every Ugandan. My last remark is about the judiciary and its role that it can play in the budgetary process. The budget is an act of parliament. It is law. And we all know that under Article 137 of our Constitution, any laws can be subjected to constitutionality. Now, there have been questions about whether actually the judiciary can go into budgetary matters, but I think now is the time, and partly that is what the opposition is proposing, that the budget should be
as a way of implementing.
It should be based on human rights. So we need to make sure that there is that every budget is subjected to tests of reasonableness, effectiveness, impact, and lastly, of course, this alone is not enough. As the opposition, it is our duty, it is a duty of every Ugandan to make sure that we mobilize the public to demand for a budget that is more aligned with priorities of the country. I thank you very much.
That is Honorable Harris, our speaker for Kawempe. And finally, we have Honorable Pollar, which I believe I've given you a fair position.
Thank you.
Because to close this out.
I'm going to close.
Your final
Thank you so much. I've been starting so I can close. But before I close, I just want to make very bullet point comment. The army is beyond reproach? No. Under the army law or army regulations, the deputy CDF is the IGG, and it puts the army officers to strict scrutiny with all the applicable laws. I think what the president meant is that there could be other areas of confidentiality, but by regulations, the deputy CDF is the IGG. I also like to comment about that. I mean, the fact that challenges in the government or governance does not amount to failure. And this is to also say that I'm not lamenting. Maybe my colleagues have not been used to cadres like me who debate soberly and accept and objectively. So when I become objective, say, oh, he's lamenting with us. No, that is not true. But challenges are there and doesn't amount to failures. We are open to it and we welcome it. I also like to say that we have proofs that we have really used resources. River Nile, we have built 3 bridges. In Jinja, the one in Kayunga, the one in the park. It had never been before. Uganda is connected to all the national borders by clean tarmac road. In Sudan, it is connected by the 3 tarmac road. In Kenya, by 4 tarmac road. Tanzania, Rwanda, Congo, everywhere. So we have proved to show that our role is to provide, mainly to provide security. Businessmen are supposed to follow us. So when we go and pacify South Sudan, please come and do business. It is not like the army would have done it power. But finally, I like to say that the budget is here. We like to subject it to strict discipline. And we have tried to do it. But we still want to assure the people that we have on reasonable grounds that the belief and the trust is on us. I sit at the party headquarters.
Yes.
On a daily, we have people who are pleading to cross to NRM, and many of them are leaders. So the trust is there, the confidence is there. Trust us. We are with you until we come back to 2026, and then we will seek your opinion again, because power belongs to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Major Pollar, Awich. We have come to the close of this show. There are so many issues to pick. As Honorable Pollar, Awich says, they have tried their best. They accept some of their challenges, but he believes that the government is still doing the best of its capacity. We have other members here, mostly from the opposition wing of government, who have also let known their issues on substance to do with the alternative budget, the major budget that was released by Honorable Matia Kasaija. But we see an overriding theme talking about governance, the culture of governance in this country. And I think that we pass that over to you. You make your judgments, you analyze this information and use it to call to action. Like Honorable Pollar, which has said in 2026, they will be back to you to ask for your opinion. So use this information to digest some of the issues that happen in Parliament. Once again, I'm Okot Olaa, your host for today. Thank you very much. Have a great Easter holiday with your family and friends. Thank you.